Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Risk On, Risk Off, and glad to have you again for another, I think, it'll be a great interview. As we talk about in the show, we're talking about risk and a lot of different facets, and with a heavy interest on construction and real estate. And as no matter what part of the country you are, I imagine there's probably a lot of construction infrastructure that's going on. And right now will be coming up pretty soon, especially with the recent passage of the infrastructure bill. So there's going to be a lot of massive projects that require a lot of capital, a lot of interesting moving parts, and a lot of partners involved in the process. And as a result, big projects are complex and require a lot of coordination and scheduling ahead of time, planning ahead of time, because you want to have a good foundation for whatever this capital project might be, whether it be a new convention center for the city, maybe whether it be a brand new auditorium for a college, public project. A lot of moving parts, a lot of interesting parts. And as a result, these larger projects, things can go wrong if not properly scheduled. And I think what we talk about a lot in risk is the concept of, plan for the worst, hope for the best, but also try to come up and think about what things could go wrong now so you can plan for it in the future. And to that point, I got the good fortune of meeting our guest years ago, because she is the founder of what is referred to as the Institute for Leadership in Capital Projects, or I-LinCP. Carol Warkoczewski founded this organization years ago because she saw sort of a need to bring partners together to try to solve large projects and sort of think about the issues ahead of time, especially with large civil governmental municipality sort of projects can have a very big impact on a region or an area for future growth and development, but you want to do it right. And so there's a lot of moving parts to get involved with that. And so I got the good fortune of knowing Carol, attended some of her conferences in the past, and she really brings a very unique perspective to how we as project owners and those involved with it should think about the risks associated with projects and how to plan for the future. And as we can talk about in our conversation, here in Texas, there's a lot of developments going on, especially what we call the Texas Triangle. If you go from Dallas down to Austin and San Antonio and curve back over to Houston, there's a lot going on in the state. And so there's definitely a need for people to think holistically at an enterprise risk management level respects these projects. And so it's with great pride I get to introduce to you Carol Warkoczewski. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's really a pleasure to chat with everybody today, and hope to have an open and honest conversation here, and appreciate any questions that people might have, and share my whatever insights I've got.
So. No, absolutely, Carol. Thank you so much. And, obviously we want to get into what's going on with the LinCP and your motivations for doing that. But I want to spend a little time just talking about yourself and your background. And before we can do that, Carol, you're about my age. You probably make this reference. If we were going to play that game, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the world is Carol today?
I am in San Antonio.
And is that where you're from?
Originally? Not originally. I was born in Chicago Heights, Illinois. My parents are from North Wisconsin, up in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, way up north. I never really lived there, though. My dad was a civil engineer, and after he and my mother got married, my dad, they moved down to Chicago, and he started his own civil engineering company and project management company. And so that's where I was born. And then he moved around a lot, depending on where the project was. I bet a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
So, I was kind of like a military brat, but not in the military. I was, in projects. So we moved to New York State. We moved to California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Holland, and then in my last 2 years of high school, we were in Paris, France. So.
Not too bad, too shabby gig in the last years of high school in Paris. I mean, that must have been a kind of interesting experience.
It was great. And I'll tell you what, the thing that I loved about it and that I still love, and this kind of feeds into, I think, a lot of what I do as well, because, during all my travels, one of the things I had to do, and actually I was very good at it, was making new friends and meeting new people and appreciating different cultures. And I think, a lot of what I do, I had some formulation experiences growing up that has kind of helped to form how I like to bring people together now, and how I like to help understand everybody's culture and values, and work on collaborative type of techniques and things like that.
Awesome.
Anyway, I ended up going after high school. I started at the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
All right.
And I actually majored in environmental design and double majored in environmental psychology. So, kind of once again, this interest in people and how people work together was brought forward for me in that. And then I moved down to the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, which is where
Hmm.
the School of Architecture and Urban Planning is. So that's where I graduated from college with my degree, and decided to, go. I had this, like, I really liked, I liked art.
Hmm.
And as I said, I liked environmental design, which is a lot about planning and about, how do you plan a building properly, a project
Hmm.
properly, and with a focus on the environment. And but I decided I really wanted to become an architect to kind of
Okay.
make those ideas more tangible. So that's why I went into architecture. But I always had this focus on how do people work together.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I love being in San Antonio. I moved to Austin. My husband and I moved to Austin right after we got married out of
Okay.
college. We had a friend there, and then moved down to San Antonio in 2012. And I love it here. It's wonderful.
So it's a great segue. So obviously, when looking at your background, you've done a number of things as far as you were with the University of Texas system, and then you actually were the city architect for the city of San Antonio. Walk us through what does it mean to be the city architect for a large metropolitan city?
Yeah, well, what I've learned is it means different things in different cities. So it can, when here at the city of San Antonio, it was almost like a kind of a super program manager, if you will. So under the city architect, I had the responsibilities for 20 or so staff people. They were primarily either project managers or assistant project managers.
Hmm.
And probably about a third of them were actually architects, or had degrees in architecture, and the others had different backgrounds but were basically assistant project managers. And so a lot of it was kind of just herding the cats. And of course, keeping everybody up above me, so to speak, informed about what was going on. And of course, dealing with issues. And there's always
Hmm.
issues, as you know.
Yeah.
But then I also, what I really actually loved doing was working with our client departments, say the library departments or the fire departments, animal care services, et cetera, et cetera, and helping work with them to make sure that our projects really, uh, met their needs and desires. And so that was really important. But we hired architects to actually
Okay.
do the design work. So we did no design. Yeah, it was project
Yeah.
management, but oversight, looking at design in some ways without putting a hard hammer on it. I'm not going to say I
Hmm.
want you to do this way. It was very,
Yeah.
let's talk about what are the needs of the project, what are the client's needs, and make sure things make sense.
Awesome. So for everybody who's
Yeah.
sitting there watching the show live, if you wish to have a question for Carol, if you look to the bottom right hand your corner of the screen, you're going to see a little picture of me, and next to is an oval. It says "Add a comment." Please go ahead and type your question there and press enter. And as long as it's clean and appropriate, I'll go ahead and ask it, bring it to Carol's attention. And I guess like right off the bat, Lance, there's a question, but we've got a nice from comment from Duane Reedus saying, "Great to see you here."
Yeah.
So,
Joanne, hey.
so you got your fan base here
Yeah.
watching, which is good, awesome. So, Carol, obviously, during the time, City of San Antonio, you're an architect, and look at your sort of the timeline here. I guess at some point while you were there, this whole concept of maybe trying to think, how to improve capital projects in the industry and the coordination, some stuff got in your head. Walk me through what the idea was and why you decided to come up with the formation of the Institute for Leadership in Capital Projects.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, that foundational story actually goes way back to when I was a young architect working for a GSC Architects in Austin.
Hmm.
And my projects were primarily on the public side. So projects for the city of of Austin.
Hmm.
And then I also had some healthcare projects. And the thing as a young architect, you're just kind of taking everything in, right? And you don't really have a firm understanding of really how everything works together. It takes some experience to understand that. Now, the
Yeah.
more I saw how things work together, the more I realized that, you know, we were missing some communication somewhere. Like our
Mhm.
client, we didn't have the right communication sometimes on things. A couple things would get missed. But then I moved over and I was invited to apply for a position at the University of Texas system.
Hmm.
Wow, what a game changer that was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
really an eye opener. I mean, being on the owner side is completely different, and I loved it. I love kind of being more in charge. I think I'm a micromanager. My nod to laugh about that, but so being on the owner side is so different than being on the production side of things or on the consultant side of things. And we had to negotiate this kind of three-legged stool a lot more closely. The three-legged stool kind of being the owner side, the design side, and the construct side, because we had to bring in the architects, right? Same
Yeah.
thing at the city. We hired the professional consultants. We brought in the contractor. We had to hire them.
Mhm.
So now, I mean, now we can do design build where the designer and the contractor are more together, but even now today, typically there's separate contracts between the architect and the contractor.
Mhm.
So negotiating those contracts and making sure that things are clear in the contract from the owner's perspective. Of course, the owner always wants things their way,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
the contract is typically written by the owner
Correct.
and or finessed by the owner to be in their benefit because the owner's got the money and
Yeah.
everything, the power on that. But the thing is, and I started to learn even more deeply how important it is that those three entities, major stakeholder groups, the owner, the contractor, and the engineer or architect, had to work closely together and be closely aligned. And then during that time, also on my projects, when I was doing more project management, later on, I was assistant director, but I started to bring in a facilitator to help me on my projects with a partnering process,
Okay.
which was brought in actually by Jim Broadus, who now has, of course, Broadus
Mhm. Doing
Consulting.
well.
But
Yep.
yeah, so he brought in our uh, alternate project delivery processes. He brought in so many really amazing new processes for the University of Texas system, and which then promulgated out to the system offices. So that experience with the partnering process,
Mhm.
that is where I said, aha, because that's where we aligned the project team, we aligned the values, we talked about a goal. So all of this comes back to what you're talking about as well. And as far as planning goes, kind of obtusely, but it does.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And then that's kind of the foundation story of the Institute for Leadership in Capital Projects. Because from that point, when I got the bug about project partnering,
Mhm.
I was like, I mean, my first one I went to, I sat in the back of the room and the facilitator went through this process and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. People were talking to each other. They were focused instead of on the issues of the project, they're focusing on the project success,
Okay.
which is what you really want on a project. So
Um,
that was the start.
yeah, no, I think that's a very good point in the sense that because, and let's maybe talk about for a second before the alignment process, and maybe talk about some of the war stories or some of the best, because you learn from your um, bad experiences as well as good experiences. Before this concept of partner processing, could you give some examples of things, some of the things you saw or issues that were common? Because you talk about, you got the owner, you got the GC, you got subs, you got architect. There's a lot of moving parts on these projects, and things can go wrong if someone don't communicate properly, or it's misalignment, or just you're withholding information. Can you maybe provide some maybe a couple bad stories you saw that sort of highlight the need for the alignment process?
Um, sure. So a lot of times a contractor will have a bad experience with an owner client. and vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens is that relationship coming into it can be tainted at the very start. And even though the reality is that on any project, even if you have the same contractor or you have the same client, say, the city of San Antonio, um, odds are there's going to be different players, right? So if you had a bad experience with a particular client or a particular contractor or engineer, architect, um, you you have to get over kind of that previous experience, and you
Mhm.
have to be able to focus on what is the good of the project. And a lot of times those bad experiences were, it's just kind of like a one-off thing. Stuff happens on projects, right? And it's not what if there are things that are going to happen,
Yeah.
because they are, but it's
Yeah.
how you overcome them and how do you work together. So on a project that goes bad, then how do you overcome that?
Yeah.
And so what I saw was that people typically, they're pointing fingers. And if you had a previous kind of poor experience with another person, you're going to point that finger faster.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to kind of learn how to trust. And I think that's when, we know the speed of trust, Stephen Covey, we know that that is the most important thing on any project team. So
Yeah.
when that trust bond is broken, you've got to heal that. So what I would see a lot is just people jumping to conclusions or people making assumptions that the other person is trying to get it all for themselves, or they're just going to be the hammer, right?
Yeah.
One way or the other, or they're the contractor's out to get the most money they can and wring it out of the client,
Mhm.
and the client's just trying to hold on to whatever they've got, and so they're holding on to information, they're holding on to a lot of stuff, right? And so there's that trust is really bad. So that's kind of, I would say, the thing that I've seen on projects that don't work very well is that
Yeah.
lack of trust.
Fair enough. So, with the institute, what is sort of your objectives or desires to see as far as what using this chapter in your organization? How do you go forth to try to, improve that lines of communications with all the different parties?
Right. So the I-LinCP is kind of a extension of my consulting company, which is called
Okay.
Synergy Builders Consulting. So, Synergy Builders Consulting, I started that after I got my master's in organizational leadership and ethics, and that's the MSOLE after my name.
Okay.
If you see that on my name, that's what
Yeah.
that stands for. And that's a degree program, a master's program from the St. Edward's University in Austin.
There you go.
And yeah, so it's in that program, I think about leadership and ethics. That's what we need in our industry.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
need good leadership. And I don't mean we need, titles after the ends of people's names, right? That's not what I'm talking about, because you can have leadership at all levels, as we know, right? And that's
Hmm.
what's really important. So I got that degree, and then I decided, oh, remember that partnering workshop, those workshops I used to do when I worked at UT System? So by
Yeah.
that time, I had actually moved away from UT System because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to impact my industry, my world in a different way. So I started Synergy Builders Consulting. So I started partnering workshops and
Okay.
facilitating.
Yeah.
And so that was in 2006.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago. And I
Yeah.
still do that. And I've done, almost 100 of those. So I saw I-LinCP as a way to express what was going on in the partnering workshops in a broader fashion.
Yeah.
I really thought, okay, I love partnering. I love being able to have a positive impact on singular projects. And I was getting very good feedback from that. And I said, I want to do something bigger. So it's just
Awesome.
a desire to expand my ripple, if you will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Expand my area of influence. So that led to the start, our very first Leadership in Capital Projects Forum, which was in 2009, and actually our very first forum was here in San Antonio, as a matter
Okay,
of fact.
good.
Yeah,
So
so it
how?
was our first conference,
Yeah.
and, actually, it's our second one, sorry,
Okay.
but, the first one was actually in Austin, but
Okay.
when we did that first one in Austin, the impact, the feedback was, "Carol, you gotta do this all over, you gotta
Good.
start a nonprofit," and I'm like, "Okay, this is not in my, like, 5-year
Yeah.
plan or
Sure.
whatever."
Yeah.
This is so, but I think we have to go kind of where the energy leads us
Hmm.
as a leader and just as a person. I think, uh, and so that's what kind of has been my go by is where's the energy leading me? So that led to I-LinCP. And then in 2012, when I came down to San Antonio, that's when we really got going and started our chapters.
Fantastic. So yeah. So let's fast forward to
So
now.
with I-LinCP, yeah,
Yeah. So how many? Let's talk about how
yeah.
many
Well, I
chapters
want
do
to
you
get
have right
back
now?
a little bit. Yeah, well, before we do that, Brian, I mean, you asked the question about what I want to do with I-LinCP.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously, you know, I want this broader impact on our industry.
Hmm.
And the broader impact is, let's improve our trust amongst ourselves. Let's break down those silos and make those connections between the owner and the design side and the construct side. And I want people to understand, like, what do the owners really want? What do they really need? Let's be open and honest here. And contractors, the
Hmm.
owner needs to know what's bothering you. How can we make your life easier? Because when your life is a little bit easier, and I don't want to say perfect, but when we can help you succeed, then we have a better project. And architects, same thing. Let's make sure we're working together. And I just think as we put these little bits and pieces out there and provide opportunities for people to hear from each other and
Yeah.
hear different perspectives, which is a big part of our focuses on our forums. I just think, the more we know, the better we can be.
Yeah.
So that's my bigger perspective on I-LinCP.
Well, I think a
Now,
nice little comment here from Miss Rita. She could see, self-directed leaders joining other focused leaders, which I think is, having been to link up and participate, I got to say, it's very impressive what you've been able to build with this over the years, and especially considering how much growth is going on in Texas. I think it's something that's needed and continue to be needed going forward. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. Here's the thing. Right? Texas is huge. We have all this work going on, tremendous money coming in, going out, being spread around, getting used, getting leveraged, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens in Texas affects the world,
yeah,
certainly affects the nation. And so we have a tremendous opportunity to affect positive change in Texas through I-LinCP and through how we are efficient and effective in our projects. Because if we are working around people, if we are not sharing information, we are not being efficient or effective. And
yeah,
so we can always improve on that.
yeah. So Carol, I think one of the things, at least from my perspective, I've been with, I work with in the construction real estate world. I represent both, general contractors and owners, and see the contracts that go forth and pushing down to the subs and the architects, engineers. There's a lot of moving parts, but I think, and not to say I have a loaded question, but I do believe that the difference between a good project, one that is successful, versus one that typically can be hairy as far as lawsuits or cost overruns, whatever, is the fact that rather than being a antagonistic relationship between, say, the owner who just wants cost, that's it, and trying to squeeze the GC for everything it possibly can, and then that pushes down to the subs, is having more of a able to see the bigger picture,
Hmm.
and knowing that especially I would say in a public project where you want to build it to be last, to be successful, to be to be there and be a cornerstone of an entity, whatever, for a long period of time, and as such, cutting corners and nickel and diming everything is not necessarily the best long-term interest. But I mean, That being said, Carol, and what would your retake as far as what's the difference between a good project and a bad project?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that building on the public side, particularly, we're not building the short term single family house or the the whatever you're going to flip in the next year, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, longevity and operability and maintainability is super important, and sometimes the owner has to give up. Sometimes I should say not really give up, but has to be open to alternative solutions to what might be deemed the most prettiest, over
Mhm.
and focus on kind of how is this going to be maintained. And it's super important. I'd say the projects that I've seen also go bad are the ones that got kind of pushed through without enough focus and understanding of the maintenance side of things, the O&M side of
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
then, and then I would hear complaints. This is the big thing I would get from complaints, particularly at the city of San Antonio, is why is this? I can't, I need a 20-foot ladder to change the light bulb up in the ceiling. I can't do that. That's
No.
dangerous. Oh, I mean, it's funny, we laugh about those sort of things, and you go into these beautiful buildings, and we love the tall ceilings and stuff, but
Sure.
we got to remember the practicality of things too.
Yeah.
And there's
Exactly.
different solutions. So it's not like we have to sacrifice. We just have to understand that piece of it. And I mean, mechanical equipment. Oh gosh, um, the mechanical engineers and maintenance people that go into those mechanical rooms and
Hmm.
go, I don't have enough space to pull my filter out.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the one of the things I did at the city of San Antonio is I led the development of a design and construction standards for our projects. They weren't specifications,
Yeah.
but I literally went around to all of our client um, departments. And I said, what's important to you? And so our facilities and maintenance people had a very long list.
Hmm.
Our sustainability people had department had a good list. I was like, let's get these rather than trying to do this one off every single time. Let's get it down in one book, one manual that we hand over to the architect and engineer, and we say, okay, here's your go by, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to have to revisit this. If you have questions or you want to do something different, let us know. We'll talk about it. But I think that's really important when projects fail. Honestly, that there's issues like you said that we get through, and at the end of the day, we can say, "Yay!" We do the ribbon cutting, but the truth is in the tasting, right?
Yeah.
And after a year, and people have been using the project, using the facility, the building, whatever it is, that's when things start to come to light about what didn't really work very well.
Yeah. So fast forward to now, we kind of made allusion to it earlier, but obviously it's grown quite a bit to the point you have multiple chapters now across the state.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, so you're providing a solution or at least a reference or resource that people seem to really have taken a shine to appreciate. What, as you kind of fast forward to now in Texas, what are some of the larger concerns or issues that your members bring up or seem to have the most interest in understanding as far as what are the things that can make their projects better in light of the current environment here in Texas?
Yeah, well, for several years, actually, probably, I'm going to say for, probably 12, I had to run off, but I'll continue to answering. So, I mean, for several years, as all of you know, um, the workforce has been a big issue. I mean, that has been, I think ever since we started I-LinCP, that was one of the things that people talked about the most is getting the right workforce.
Hmm.
And that has not abated, right? And we're still looking at this big cliff where people are going to be retiring at all levels, the
Hmm.
workers and the presidents and the project managers and people of a certain age. So we're continuing to hear the concern about that, and there's a lot of reasons, not just like getting the work done,
Yeah.
right? But what's leaving is a lot of the institutional knowledge. I
Yeah.
mean, even if you think about the bricklayers, or the people putting up the metal studs, or
Yep.
that type of thing. And they have to train. They have to train new people.
Yeah.
And if there's no one really at that level to train the younger folks or the newer folks, then that's a challenge. And so that also then comes back to quality, right? So that's directly affecting the owner client at the end of the day, is making sure they have good workers on their project. So the workforce is definitely a concern. One of the things that we do at I-LinCP is we really promote diversity. And we have our women's forum every year. We really promote getting women involved in this industry, in whether it's design side, management side, in the field. And there's some great people doing work with getting more tradespeople who are women in, because everybody needs to show up, to help us with this issue around workforce development. So that's really important.
Yeah. And Carol, I think, and again, remind everybody, if you're sitting here watching the show live, you have the ability to write a question for Carol or subject you want us to address. Please, in the bottom right-hand corner, you see my photo. Next to it, there's an oval that says add a comment. Please type in your question, your comment, and I'll bring it to Carol's attention. But Carol, you bring up a point on workforce that is it's a bigger picture. And it's something I think is very much to the point. Not in construction, I think I would argue is very much hit by this, because you make the comment as far as you've got the baby boomers who are near retirement, and we've had a steady decline in birth rates in this country. So there's not enough people behind the baby boomers as far as just replace one for one. There's still plenty of work that needs to be done. We have the capital infrastructure bill that's even the money hasn't even started coming in yet. That is going to be requiring a lot more, gobbling up a lot more demand and needing for a subcontractor base, which they don't have enough people to fill it. And then we see it every day. It's a hot topic in the people. It's the third rail, immigration. As far as, you got to crack down immigration. But then when I say she obviously have legal migration, but there's also historically, and anybody who doesn't believe this is being naive, construction is often a prime attraction for immigrants, whether it be legal or illegal. And in this state, we've been using illegal aliens or undocumented workers, whatever term you want to use, in construction for decades. I mean, I defy you to find a housing project, that a new home that's not being used by undocumented workers, or in heavy, difficult jobs that most people don't want to do. And millennials and Gen Z doesn't seem to have much of interest in doing these jobs. So, I mean, the math doesn't match up. And so I'm curious, Carol, when you're talking to people and you have your seminars, your workshops in the chapters, what is the sentiment, if anybody, to realize as far as to solve the immigration problem, to therefore solve the need for labor in construction?
Wow. You just went right there, didn't you, Brian?
I mean, we talk about risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, of course, we really try to stay apolitical and not get engaged in immigrant issues and that sort of thing. But obviously, that's something that we are thinking about all the time, and I totally agree. We have to provide a good way for new people to come in. I mean, this is how the United States has always been built, whether it's the Irish or,
here, correct.
Whoever, different countries. And we've always embraced that because it's really important for all kinds of reasons. But obviously, in what we call kind of unskilled labor, and, just the people that are out there digging the ditches, so to speak, or that type of thing. Unfortunately, we've kind of expected those to be a lot of immigrants, and whether documented or non-documented. And there's a big issue around all of that. And I wish that we would have a more equitable way to approach labor in this country, and in a lot of different ways. So I think that is a really big issue. It's not something that I-LinCP, because we don't get into that kind of situation, but certainly we don't shy away from a discussion about that.
Yeah. And along the lines, because this is a question of numbers, but you make the point too, as far as DEI, as far as trying to bring more people into workforce, as far as construction. But construction is obviously
Mhm.
historically very much a male-dominated old boy network. I've been doing this my way for 20 years. Why am I going to change anything? But then the factors on the ground dictate you got to adapt or die. But when you talk about DEI and bringing more people into construction or design services, subcon base, whatever, what are some of the things that when you talk to people as far as what needs to be changed or what sort of accommodations do you think people need to think about to bring in more women in construction? Because obviously, women historically are doing the brunt of the work respects to childcare, raising picking up kids, whatever. But that can be in construction. That can be very difficult to accommodate that. I mean, so that's kind of like that push pull respects to bringing in more people, but at the same time, what can the industry do to make things more accommodating?
Right. So when you think about the industry, I think it is important to think about kind of the design side. If you think about design construction and the client side, right, the
Hmm.
client owner side, and what can each of those entities kind of do to help support women, particularly, or any kind of diversity in their organizations. It's amazing to me, Brian,
Yeah.
is because I still hear from women how challenging it is to be on the job, on the ground, in the field.
Yeah.
And that includes whether you're a woman architect engineer and you're out there doing your CA work or your quality control, or you're working as a tradesperson or as a project manager, or project engineer on the construction side, how challenging it can be. I mean, there is still a lot of, haranguing, name calling, if you will, just,
Hmm.
you know, um, unacceptable behavior that goes on in the field from men towards
Yeah.
women in the field. And so it surprises me because I don't get out in the field very much. And when I was doing some of that for working at the city of San Antonio and even for UT System, I felt like I was respected and I didn't get that type of behavior.
Yeah.
But I hear a lot from women, and until that can change in the field, it's going to be challenging. I shouldn't say until that will change because it will change.
Yeah.
It just takes persistence. It takes
Yeah.
training, and it also, it's this thing about the one and only, right? When you're the one and only out there, you are definitely seen as the other. Now, if you are out there and there's a handful of women out there, right, and 40 men. You're a little bit more than one. And the more exposure I think men and people see with women in the field, the more it becomes, oh, that's now it's now the norm, not the exception. And so I think
Yeah.
that's really important. And when you think about in the office side of things, there's a lot, like you said. I mean, childcare is a huge problem. That's a national problem.
Yep.
We have to definitely change what our country is doing with childcare. It shouldn't be something that you can, only some people can afford to do it. Or if you have childcare, you're working 2 or 3 jobs to afford to pay for childcare. That's wrong. It's just
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Other countries have gotten this, so much better. And so I think that's one of the big things that our whole country needs to improve upon. But businesses can help with that too. There's lots of flexibility. I think it's just a lot of it is the ones that are really doing a good job. What do? They
Yeah.
ask the women, what's important to you? Can we provide a babysitter when your child is sick? And we'll have a pool. We'll help pay for that. We'll help support that. So there's a lot that architects, engineers, contractors can do for women that are primarily working. Well, it doesn't matter in the field even or in the
Yeah.
office. So there's a lot that can be done. I think it's just ask. You're not
Yeah.
going to know everything off the top of your
Yeah.
head. So you got to ask
Yeah.
questions.
So, Carol, obviously, with the organization, a lot of different functions you guys covered. And I remember had the privilege of being on moderating one of your panels last year. in San Antonio.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of topics that are impacting the industry in the state, especially in Texas. And one of the things, especially from an insurance perspective, we're definitely seeing the impact of climate change, how it's impacting projects as far as frequency and severity of named storms, and hail is becoming an issue. It's always been an issue, but it's really getting worse as far as here in Texas for insurance purposes and also for damage that occur on a project. But with that comes sustainability. And I know that you've got, with the organization, you've got a forum coming up in San Antonio in August for Lone Star Sustainability Forum. Would you want to talk a little more about what that's going to cover?
Yeah, absolutely. This particular forum, the Lone Star Sustainability Forum, we are doing these every 2 years, and actually the one that's coming up is only our second one.
Oh, okay.
that is branded in this particular fashion.
Yeah.
We did a forum back in 2010 in Dallas that was around green design, green building, but we hadn't really done one that was just focused on sustainability until 2022. So we're doing the Lone Star Sustainability every other year. And we are alternating that now with our Texas Public Owners Forum, Brian, which is the one that we're a great moderator at.
Thank you.
So the Lone Star Sustainability Forum, yeah. And this year, our theme is called Elemental.
I like it.
So elemental, when you think about elemental, what does that
wind? I mean, like
for you?
the wind and water and earth and that elemental. That's what comes to my mind. So
okay, the elements, right?
Yeah.
It can also mean elemental, my dear Watson, right? Like that's basic.
Yeah.
I mean, elements are the basic building blocks of our world, right? But it also can mean, hey, this is kind of like everybody should be doing this. So there's lots of different connotations with the word elemental, but we're going to be, our key topics are going to be the same as 2022. So we're going to be looking through a key topic of planning, and absolutely planning is like the number one project success factor.
Amen to
I think,
that.
from that perspective,
Yeah.
planning,
Planning.
and then infrastructure, buildings, and then leadership and economics. So those are kind of our four key topics. And then within that, we're going to be talking, kind of bringing in the elemental piece of it. We're going to ask presenters to bring that into their presentations and discussions.
Yeah.
So the thing that I really love about this forum also is that we have, we'll do presentations, we'll have panel discussions, we'll have keynotes, and then we have a couple of breakouts. We don't do a lot of breakouts. As a matter of fact, our conferences, we intentionally limit them to like 120 or so people, because we want people to be able to get to know each other better and to have really good conversations.
Yeah.
So we'll have breakouts, we'll have that, and then we'll have everybody come together and have table discussions, and then we'll do some polling so we can ask questions of the audience. And I just love that aspect of it, and people really like that too.
Yeah.
And then,
well, firsthand, I saw firsthand the smaller nature, but it does have to be more collaborative in nature, which I thought was fantastic. So, Carol, still there?
Yeah, definitely. It's just, are you here, Brian? You got me?
No, a little buffering. Gotcha.
Oh, a little, okay, all right. Yeah, so having a smaller audience really does make our forums more intimate. And when we first began doing our forums, I asked my board, do we want to do a big conference? How do we want to do this? And they're like, no, we want it to be more intimate. That's going to make our forums really shine differently than a lot of the conferences that people have experience with. And I think that's one of the things that has made our forums successful, because it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And people just have better conversations. They meet people. I mean, it's amazing the input I get later on. It's like, oh yeah, I started doing some work with this person, or yeah, we hired this person, or they made me got in touch with such and such. So yeah, it's good.
Fantastic. So always be respectful of the time here. So you guys, if you got your sitting watching live, if there's a question you have for Carol, please go ahead and bottom right hand corner. You see my image next to an oval. Type in your question, submit, enter, and I'll bring it to Carol's attention. So Carol, obviously, being a member and a foundation, a founder of this chapter is impressive and probably takes a lot of your time as far as your full-time job. But Carol, when you're not working, what are you doing?
um, yeah, I don't know. I'm traveling. I'm traveling. Well, this past year has been kind of challenging.
Okay.
My mom had a car accident on Thanksgiving Day
I'm sorry.
and broke her legs, and so that's taken up a lot of time. And she's now living with us for a little while longer till she can get her sea legs back and move back to Llano. And then I had my some other family health issues going on, but when I'm not taking care of those things, and hopefully this is just one of those years, I love to travel. My husband and I were in Portugal actually almost a year ago in May.
Oh, wow.
June of last year, and it was amazing for almost a month. We've been, I got the travel bug when I was growing up all over the place. And my husband, it's funny, he was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he didn't do a lot of traveling. But when he married me, one of the things we did, and some people know this, we bought a 1971 VW camper van, and we drove that little camper van all around the U.S. down to Guatemala, Mexico. It was for a year. So
wow, that's fantastic. So people are sitting here watching this; they're going to watch it later. What are your top 3 spots? What are your top 3 go-to spots for travel?
We really like Mexico. It's it's close by. There's a lot of variety to it, kind of like the United States, right? I love the United States too. I mean, there's so much to see here. I have an affinity for France since I lived there for almost 3 years in my formative years.
Nice.
So I love France and Europe as well.
Okay.
And
we got the Olympics coming up, and so maybe some of these people might be going to the Olympics. What are your as far as France? Where specifically do you prefer?
What city?
Well, any regions? I mean,
region. I mean Paris.
Yeah, Paris.
Paris. I mean, the Mediterranean is beautiful too, but I lived in Paris. I kind of understand how Paris works, and it does seem very chaotic when you first get there.
Yeah.
But I learned how to drive around the Étoile, and
oh wow,
in the Bois de Boulogne. So
wow,
it doesn't scare me.
That's taken on a risk of its own. That's impressive.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, the art, the cultural aspects of it, of course, the food anywhere in France is amazing. And I mean, anywhere in France is fabulous. That just happens to be the place I know the best.
Yeah. So what about as far as you're on ground zero, San Antonio, as far as what's going on because I tell the joke when I was in college, I went to Southwestern, late 80s, early 90s. You could do that drive between Austin and San Antonio and it'd be a whole bunch of nothing for quite a long time. But now it's just one continuous development the entire way, with places like, San Marcos and New Braunfels getting, developed as well. What is, for someone who's not familiar with San Antonio, hasn't seen it been growing, tell us what's going on down there as far as your perspective.
Yeah, well, I think just it's just becoming a big megalopolis, I guess you'd say, between San Antonio and, Round Rock, Georgetown, even Waco, and that's going to continue. I don't see any stopping to that.
Yeah.
One of the things we did a couple of weeks ago, we had a luncheon about water, and we had some folks coming in and talk about water development and the concern about water in the state, and particularly in this area of such high growth. And there's a lot to be said about water. And matter of fact, we're going to get into that definitely at our Lone Star Sustainability Forum. But that's, I think that's one of those resources that you can't make it. Well, you can do desalinization, but then that comes with its own issues, right? And that's, so we have to find a good balance between conserving and, no one wants to say, no, you can't come here because we, And we're definitely not in such bad shape as some other parts of the country, obviously.
Well, no, and to that point, Carol, actually, water is one of my topics I'm hoping to talk on this show in the future because,
Mhm.
like specifically in Arizona, it was now it's like they're cutting back or stopping further development in areas because they don't know they can't guarantee they have enough water to support residential growth. And I think it's something that people don't truly appreciate or understand, especially with climate change, and then how much with as far as is required. People realize how much states along the Colorado River, which the Colorado goes through Texas and Austin, people realize how much they need that water to be flowing in order to support development and growth in agriculture. But the water has been getting less and less over the years, as far as it makes it all the way
Yeah.
down, to the Gulf. So it's a big picture. It's a big picture problem. That's for sure. So
Definitely. And you think about the design construction industry, how much water we use,
correct.
and there, there's opportunities for conserving definitely within our industry as well as just personally, of course. Um, yeah.
Fantastic. So, Carol, if somebody wanted to know more about the Institute, how would you suggest they learn more, or how would they find out about coming events or seminars?
Yeah. People are welcome. I don't know, Brian, if you're going to send out any information about me, but I mean, I'm kind of an open, contact me if you want
Yeah.
anytime. It's Carol at Carol.Warkoczewski at I-LINCP.org. So I-LINCP.org is our website. And we have a ton of information on there about upcoming events. Sign up to get announcements. We also have a golf tournament coming up
Oh,
on May 3rd.
all right.
On Friday, May 3rd, and it's our Crazy Pants Scholarship Benefit Golf Tournament.
Nice.
We actually are calling it a golf classic now since we've
Okay.
been doing it so often, we can call it a classic.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be really fun. It's going to be at Brackenridge Park Golf Course, and that's kind of through our San Antonio
San Antonio.
chapter.
Very good.
But each of our chapters has different things going on. Our North Texas chapter kind of went through a lull, and so we're trying to get that going, and that would be really great if people up in North Texas wanted in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're
Mhm.
interested in getting helping to get a chapter really going up there.
Okay.
I know we're going to be setting up a organizational call pretty soon,
Okay.
and so definitely, just shoot me an email. We'd appreciate hearing from anybody. Um, so yeah, get involved. I mean, there's just tons of opportunities. I got to tell you, when you're on the chapter kind of board or involved in the
Mhm.
organization, one of the great things is you get to have us backing you up. So,
Yeah.
you can go out to a potential client or consultant or contractor and say, "Hey, I want to learn some more about this or that. We think you be a good presenter for a luncheon presentation or something." You're not just going out there on your own. You're representing I-LinCP, and so that's kind of a nice thing.
Amen. Carol, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great conversation. I think it's very timely respects to with the growth that we're seeing in Texas, and the plethora of infrastructure projects that are now and coming to the future. And having seen from my perspective, insurance, I could see how things go right and wrong on a project. And I do think, like the old adage, little pound of ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And having a collaborative approach to projects and sort of talking it through so that you understand, oh, maybe the guy can't change the filter out if you confine the office, the room too tight. That's the kind of thing you want to talk about ahead of time. So, Carol, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the project, the chapter going forward.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate it very much. I'm surprised there weren't any questions,
Well,
but
some people are shy. Some people are shy, but thank you for Miss Rita. At
I
least you
was
put
just
some comments.
regaling everybody so much, didn't have time to think about a question, I guess.
No, it's
But
awesome.
thank you. Thanks. And, it's going to be a beautiful weekend here in San Antonio. So y'all go out and enjoy this beautiful Texas weather.
Awesome. Thanks, Carol.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye. So that was another a great conversation here on Risk On, Risk Off. Again, the focus a lot of times here is about, capital projects and construction and real estate. But as Carol sort of mentioned, there are a lot of things that come into a project. And as a result, trying to get all the parties in alignment to think collaboratively is, I think, a key to success to try to reduce, errors, omissions, cost overruns, or just even, designing a room where the air conditioning tech can't get the filter out. So those are the kind of things you want to address ahead of time. So therefore you have success down the road with your project. So as always, I hope that you enjoyed this. If there are certain topics or individuals you'd like to see on this show, please reach out to me. And you can also subscribe to this on my YouTube channel to find this and prior episodes of Risk On, Risk Off for your viewing pleasure. Until next time, guys. Bye.